Welcome to the 2020 Critical Code Studies Working Group. My name is Jeremy Douglas, and I will be hosting this year's event along with Mark Marino and Zach Mann. 2020 marks the 10-year anniversary of the first working group and our 6th biennial meeting, with over 150 accepted participants joining us from all over the world. For the next 3 weeks, from January 20th to February 9th, participants will visit the Working Group online forum to join in weekly plenary discussions on 3 topics: framing the field, Indigenous programming, and feminist artificial intelligence. Our plenary discussion leaders will include Sarah Siston, John Corbett, Catherine Griffiths, Uti Leahy, Jason Edward Lewis, Christine Minders, Daniel Temkin, Mark Marino, and myself. As a participant, we welcome you and we invite you to engage with the working group in several ways. First, join each weekly plenary discussion. Second, if you wish, start new discussion threads related to the main topic of the week, or to critical code studies in general. Third, post new entries to the shared bibliography of critical code studies. Fourth, post code critiques, 1 or more. Code critiques involve sharing a specific code artifact and inviting discussion and analysis. Your critique may be a curio, a provocation, or a full interpretive argument with request for responses. The code may be found, or of your own creation. For some newcomers, this is your first time at the working group. For others, you are returning, and for a few, you have been attending for a decade. For myself, every time we have reconvened this community, I've been amazed at its diversity of backgrounds, perspectives, methods, and goals. Critical Code Studies, also known as CCS, is an evolving interdisciplinary field centered around the many intersections of computer code with culture, including the cultural significance and meaning of code artifacts, as well as the many practices and processes whereby code is read, written, and circulated. The field exists at the intersection of many disciplines, methods, and conversations, including computer science, cultural studies, digital humanities, media archaeology, software studies, platform studies, game studies, human-computer interfaces, and many more besides. We ask that all participants, old and new, please add a brief post to the Introduce Yourself thread, and later take a moment to go back, read, and appreciate the introductions of your amazing fellow participants. This working group has long served as a productive center for dialogues in critical code studies, which, as a field, encompasses a diverse collection of books, journal issues and articles, white papers, conferences and sessions, art practices, grants, and projects, too numerous to detail here. A significant number of these activities first germinated here in conversations that began in this working group. We've got a great lineup of plenary discussions for this year. Given that this is a significant anniversary for the group, I'd like to take a moment to recite some of the topics that have been featured in working groups of years past. This isn't the full programs or the lists of many session leaders and participants, it's just a sketch of the evolving conversations that have been and may now continue. In 2010, the working group opened with discussion of the concept of critical code studies itself. Other featured topics included public code reading practices, annotating source code in the example of the game Adventure, live coding, and a chapter from Wendy Chun's Programmed Visions. The 2012 group was organized around discussions of code ethics, code literacy, and code and play. 2014 hosted plenaries on exploratory programming, feminist code, post-colonial code critique, and collaborative scholarly environments for code studies. 2016 featured code literacies, archaeologies of code, with the example of reading Eliza, and the politics and ethics of code. Most recently, the 2018 working group held plenaries on gender and programming culture, creative and critical coding, and race and code. 2 years later, we resumed the conversation on January 20th, which in the United States coincides on this year with the observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a federal and state holiday in the U.S. While for many participants in the U.S., this coincidence means that our working group may not begin for them until Tuesday, to my mind it is worth noting at this moment that questions of race, ethnicity, labor, civil rights, and justice have remained among the central concerns in our ongoing conversations on reading code for the past decade. This year, we will hold 3 weekly plenary discussions. Each week is organized, hosted, and moderated by experts who serve as session leads. Our Week 1 plenary, beginning on January 20th, is Introduction to Critical Code Studies, led by Mark Marino and myself. Week 2, beginning on January 27th, is Indigenous Programming, led by John Corbett, Uti Leite, Jason Edward Lewis, and Daniel Temkin. Week 3, beginning on February 3rd, is Feminist AI, led by Christine Minders, Sarah Siston, and Catherine Griffiths. We'll begin Week 1 with a framing and reintroduction to critical code studies writ large, beginning with a shared conversation around the introductory chapter to Mark Marino's forthcoming book from MIT Press. This is an opportunity for all of us to think about where the field came from, where we've been, where we are, and where we may be headed. Looking forward, critical code studies faces new opportunities and new challenges, both as an intellectual community and as a set of scholarly methods and practices. Some of these involve the shifting social and economic landscapes in which code circulates or does not circulate. Code is available or unavailable, as authored or minified or compiled or generated. Code is open source or closed. Some involve the emergence of systems of new technological regimes, from big data and social media to ubiquitous machine learning and applied quantum computing. In a world where code potentially touches almost any facet of lived experience and may shape almost any aspect of the dynamics of difference and power between people, code and software in the abstract can seem like a non-Newtonian fluid, both soft and hard, both fluid and crystalline, a kind of cultural oobleck that we are alternately sinking into and smashing up against. But code is not continuous. It is not a gray goo. It is not a white noise. It is not a diffuse rain of alphanumeric characters glowing green in the light of the matrix. Instead, code is particular, expressive, media-specific, material, historically and culturally situated, always of its time and its place. I look forward to reading, writing, and thinking through code with you. Welcome again to the Critical Code Studies Working Group 2020.